Lisa Brown serves as the Oakland County Clerk, Register of Deeds, a position she's been elected to 3 times, initially taking office in 2013. She is the Chief Elections Officer for Michigan's second most populous county and the Certified Elections Registration Administrator, the highest designation for election administration professionals. Beyond the election, Clerk Brown administers one of the busiest departments of its kind in the state. As the official keeper of the record, the County Clerk Register is responsible for receipt and safeguarding of public records, including but not limited to birth, death, and marriage records, circuit court filings, property records, and concealed pistol licenses. Clerk Brown is active with the Michigan Association of County Clerks and the Michigan Association of Register of Deeds, and has been elected by her colleagues to various leadership positions, including third vice president for the Michigan Association of County Clerks. She was appointed by the governor to serve on the Michigan Electronic Recording Commission. A lifelong Oakland County resident, Lisa Brown is a graduate of Michigan State University and the Detroit College of Law. She is a member of the State Bar of Michigan and a former state representative. Welcome, Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. First of all, thank you for having me here today. I'm also a member of the League of Women Voters, so happy to be amongst friends and fellow defenders of democracy. Right? So as Jerry said, I began this journey as the Oakland County Clerk Register in 2013, and boy, has it changed. And I'm going to give a little breakdown, a little bit of a timeline of some of the things that have changed in the elections world. I'm not even going to talk about the other aspects, but the elections world. In 2017, the Department of Homeland Security designated election systems as critical infrastructure to protect accessibility, accuracy, and security. That was kind of a big deal. We kind of felt like, hey, we were important. Somebody finally realized that. Thank you. In 2018, in Michigan, we had Proposal 2018-3, which, amongst other things, allowed every voter to vote absentee without any reason. Of course, we now have a lawsuit about that and 22-2 from some legislators, but I'm not going to talk about that. After November 2020 elections, I have to say it was the biggest change towards my office, towards every elections office and every elections administrator. Threats, self-anointed election experts. I really tried to find a good way to word that, by the way, so it was tricky, but and literally these people, no election experience. Somebody who sells pillows, I mean the list goes on, and you know who they are as well as I do. And receiving emails and phone calls for people who really, again, don't know not only elections, but things about Oakland County and how we run our elections. So I would get phone calls and emails. You and your Dominion voting equipment. Okay, well, I don't have Dominion voting equipment, so I don't know what you're talking about. And by the way, nothing wrong with Dominion voting equipment, right? What happened in Antrim was a human error. But needless to say, we don't have Dominion voting equipment in Oakland County. So, and emails, we're watching you, all that sort of messaging. And of course, the spread of misinformation and disinformation at an astronomical rate. And it really hasn't slowed down. I keep saying, can we be done with 2020? Are we over that yet? Can we? But we haven't yet. In 2022, we read of threats of, we're sending an army to be challengers. And For me, I increased communication with law enforcement with seeing these threats. I didn't expect anything to go wrong in Oakland County. Everything's always gone well here, but better be prepared than not. And so shared information, had Zoom calls with people from our sheriff's office as well as our local police chiefs, and sharing with them a list of election day crimes so that they understood the gravity of, I don't know, unplugging a tabulator. Because we saw a state senator going around telling people to do that if they didn't like what was happening in their polls. And our Attorney General, Dana Nessel, sent out information as well about crimes and such. So, and then of course also in 2022, we had ballot proposal 22. Did I say enough twos? Okay. November of 23, this past November, fentanyl mailed to election offices in 5 states, disrupting elections. And I know at least one county in Washington state did have to evacuate their building. They had to pause tabulating absentee ballots as they evacuated the building as a possible threat of fentanyl that came into the office, and it did slow down. Didn't stop it, but it slowed it down, their election and getting their results. Last month, here in Oakland County, at one of our recounts, there were accusations of treason and threats of hanging were expressed. And I haven't even mentioned the redistricting lawsuit, foreign threats, AI, piloting early voting. It's really changed. It's really changed. And colleagues who have said, you know what, this isn't worth it. My attitude is if I quit, they win. So I don't plan on going anywhere. But it's a lot. It's a lot. And I can't remember which state, but there was an elections office. I keep forgetting where, but they all left. They all left. And I think that's what some people want, right? Threats to the state capitol. The list goes on. And I didn't also mention January 6th either. So there's a lot. There's a lot. So now I don't just think about what can I do to make our elections run smoother or increase access. With early voting, I talked to our transit, now that we have transit, Marie, around the state, around the county rather, ensuring that there's bus stops near our early voting sites, things of that nature, or where else can I hold a voter registration drive? I've gone to homeless shelters in the Oakland County Jail and our college campuses and our high schools. What else can I think about that? But now, in addition to all those things, I have to try and educate or re-educate voters on how secure and accurate our elections are, our equipment. And I also have to think about how might someone try to disrupt the election? It's kind of a backwards thing to have to think about. And what can I do to prevent that or minimize it? Now, the legislature has definitely helped. We've got a lot of new laws that are taking place next month. They didn't get immediate effect, but they'll be taking effect February 13th. And let's see, let me get to it. Let's see if I can read them without my glasses. Public Acts 252 and 253 of 2023 makes it a misdemeanor, a felony for your third and subsequent violation, to prevent an election official, including election inspectors, from performing their duties in conducting an election or intimidating them because of their status as an election official with a specific intent to interfere. So looking forward to that one taking effect next month. And also Public Acts 263 to 266, and some of that is in regards to AI, artificial intelligence, because that's a hot topic now. If somebody takes an image of me and whatever they can do to it electronically and make it sound like I'm saying the election's been postponed to Wednesday, right? We don't want any of that. That would be and it is a fear because of how far AI has gone. So some of those bills, they regulate the use of artificial intelligence in political campaigns and requires campaign ads, so qualified political advertisements, to disclose the use of AI in the creation of materials, and so on. It goes on with that. And also another bill prohibits the distribution of material deceptive media with the intention to influence the outcome of an election, et cetera. So we've got some legislation that will be helping keep the integrity of outsiders, right? It's not about the integrity of our election, but the information that voters are getting and allowing election workers to be safe in doing their job. So, and another new law, which is, I think, exciting for, I guess I should ask first, how many in this room have ever worked an absentee voting counting board? All right, a couple of you, handful. Thank you, first of all. So, new law, no longer sequestered. So when you worked in the AV counting board, an absentee voting counting board, you had to stay to the end, right? We don't want anybody knowing results before the polls closed, before anything else, and you were working, and sometimes it was a really long day or days. So now, not only is it's not sequestered, it can be done in shifts. So people can, and it's up to the local clerk how they want to run theirs, or we have a combined AV counting board for a number of our communities, how we do that. And then in addition, pre-processing, and real pre-processing, yay, and for a full 8 days. So that, those are some happy notes, some rays of sunshine for us. But as I said, there's all these other things that have been happening for the last 4 years that have added a lot of extra stress. But those aren't the only things. And some of the things are things you wouldn't maybe think of. For example, some of the things in 22 too. So I'm going to be honest, I voted for it. I knew everything that was in it, and I knew it was going to cause me some extra stress. I knew it was going to cause our local clerk some extra stress, but it's not about me, it's about the voters. But just so you understand the clerk perspective. First, drop boxes. How many of you know of Novi Township in Oakland County? Not Novi the city. I'm not talking where 12 Oaks is. Novi Township. Okay? It is literally half of a neighborhood. It is 100% residential. They vote in the clerk's home because they don't have a public building. Where do they put a drop box? Okay, this is something that kept me up. And they worked it out, but it's something that people wouldn't think about, right? The drop boxes need to have surveillance, right? So a video camera. My colleague in Mason County shared with me that some of her communities are still on dial-up. I didn't know that was still a thing, honestly. But it is, and that's what they have. And if you go to the UP, you know that you can drive for hours without ever getting a cell signal. So some challenges, right, in regards just to something that seems simple like a drop box. In addition, maybe even finding a location, right? Now there's based on population, determines how many drop boxes you need in your community. So, I mean, Novi Township's small, they need one, but still hard to find where to put that. Other communities still might have, challenges with that. Next, the audit. So in the ballot proposal, and I'm going to read to you the language that it actually said on the ballot in regards to to audits, provide that only election officials may conduct post-election audits. Sounds good, right? We want the right people conducting audits. Here's the full story. Okay, and here's the full language, or part of the full language. No officer or member of the governing body of a national, state, or local political party, and no political party precinct delegate shall have any role in the direction, supervision, or conduct of an election audit. Here's the other part that you don't know. By law, every county clerk is on the executive committee of their political party's county party. It means I can't do the audit, even though it says the election official does it. That's every county clerk in the state. And audits, besides the ones that are done at the state level by the Secretary of State's office, by the Bureau, it's done by the county clerk. So that was kind of a hiccup there that we've got. And I'm lucky enough that I have a large enough staff that I can designate staff to do that. But my colleague, her deputy is a precinct delegate, so he can't do it either. She's got a very small office, very small staff. Some of my colleagues don't have designated elections staff. So that's a little hiccup for us, a little stressor. Another one, which again, this is great, but it's the other side of the coin, right? So require military or overseas ballots to be counted if postmarked by election day. Yay, we want our members of the military, we want their ballots to be able to count, and mail sometimes takes long. We have to finish the canvass within 2 weeks. Those ballots, as well as absentee ballots that may need to be cured, are brought in a week after the election. So now we have to add those, we have to tabulate those ballots in the canvass. We can't finish, meaning we can't finish a canvass ever, basically, within a week. And with our big elections, we get close to that 2-week deadline. Now we're kind of on a holding pattern, waiting for maybe a ballot to come in. And people always say, well, why does it say unofficial results on your website? Well, it's going to say unofficial results until we finish the canvass and can certify all the races, but it's going to stay that way now for an even longer period of time because of this. Again, for it, support it, just want people to understand what that impact means. It's not just yay, everybody, we're making sure people's votes count, but what that means on the end. And I feel like I could go on, and I could talk about early voting, but I know that people probably have questions, but I also want to go before I open it up to questions, and I'm really happy to talk about early voting because that I can do in my sleep. But my ask of you is to help and educate voters. And I know you do a lot of that. And, the candidate forums are wonderful, when you're out to dinner with friends, right? When, you're at the grocery store and you hear the person in front of you make a comment that you're like, oh boy, they drank the Kool-Aid, Speak up, yes, please. Please, because it just keeps going round and round, right? And, I'll say one good thing about, there's more than one good thing, but one of the benefits of that I've had, I think, from contracting with some of our communities to tabulate their absentee ballots is I've been running, I run public accuracy tests. And I put it out to the media. It's not just putting it in the paper, but I put out a press release. And I have people come. Not a lot, but I have people come. And often there's somebody who is a doubter. I don't want to say denier, but a doubter. And we go through and explain everything to them. They really get Elections 101. And they've all walked out saying, I had no idea. What bothers me a little bit is they say, okay, well, Oakland County does it right, but I don't know about, right, ... Drives me nuts. But to me, it's opening the door, right? Maybe if they come to my public accuracy test, maybe then the people who they don't trust, they'll go see theirs, right? Go see that they're doing the same thing. So share that information, right? Hey, did you know that every community runs a public accuracy test? Not every cycle, not once a year, before every single election. Before every single election, every piece of equipment is tested. People don't know that. I think that's vital. I think they need to know. Working an election, how much do you learn? Oh my gosh, it's mind-blowing to see, because people don't know. They don't know that we print a zero report, right? Making sure there's no ballots that have been tabulated ahead of time. They don't know all the checks and balances that go into the process to ensure that our elections are secure and accurate and fair. And, you know, as I said, we're all on the same team here, and that is ensuring that people have access to the ballot, but also that, as I said, our elections are accurate, secure, and fair, right? So sharing that information with people, say, oh, hey, you know, you don't think our elections are fair? Have you ever gone to a public accuracy test? I heard West Bloomfield's got theirs next week, right? Sorry, picking on Debbie, but she's sitting in the front. And she's my friend, so I can do that. That would just be so helpful, I think, to us. Because for whatever reason, they don't trust, a lot of people aren't trusting the clerks. And maybe they'll trust you, right? And if they keep hearing the same thing that goes against what they've been hearing from somebody else, maybe they'll stop and question. Maybe they'll take the time to investigate it for themselves to find the truth. So other ways that people can get involved, right? Working an election. Now we've got 9 days of early voting. If you work early voting, you can also still work on election day. AV counting boards, everybody knows when I say AV, absentee voting, okay. Attending a public accuracy test, like I said, seeing all the checks and balances in place, lots of ways for people to get involved. Come watch the canvas. It's not that fun. Jim, is it fun?
I loved it. In fairness, the people we sent enjoyed it.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad people are enjoying it. I mean, I question what people think they're, I mean, we've had people come with binoculars. I'm not really sure what they're looking for. But, I mean, it's a really important process. I'm not belittling it. It's a very important process. I'm just, as someone who does it, I don't know what watching it, right, like somebody gets out of it, but if somebody gets something out of it, then that's great. It's like my sons always used to tell me, oh, I'm going over to my friend's house. Oh, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to watch them play video games. I'm like, wait, you're not playing the video games? No, I'm just going to watch him. I'm like, how is that fun? But, you know, so people watching Canvas, I enjoy doing the Canvas. I think it's a good learning experience for everybody, but not just a learning experience, but ensuring that everything was done right and that we balance. That's really the key, that however many voters showed up, that's how many ballots were tabulated. Do you want to say something, Jim?
Yeah, well, we did 20 and 22 canvassing, and your staff is very competent, transparent, and dedicated.
Thank you.
You know, in the beginning, they didn't really know why we were there because it was the first time we really done it on that scale. By the time that we were over the first time in 2020, when there was an issue, they'd come to us and explain it. So the transparency was very good. And I'm a big preacher, and I'm always preaching this, is our service to our community is to go and tell them how honest, transparent, and fair that it is.
Thank you. Yes.
So that's our charge right here, to go and serve that and then do that.
Yes, thank you. And yes, you know what, and you're right, and that is so valuable for you to be able to say, you know what, I sat there and watched the canvas. I know what happened there. I see this, I see that. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. You should come next time, you know, like that's how you, right? It's not just, come see it for yourself. And yes, we do explain things. We try, and I know I've gone over the checklist with you. So, and then whenever anybody comes, I like to go over the checklist with somebody who's observing, so they know what it is that we're looking at, what we're doing, what the canvassers are doing. So, did I see another hand? No? Okay. Can I open it up to questions? Is that okay? Okay. I'm opening it up to questions, and it can be, well, almost anything, but go ahead, Jim.
How did the consolidated early voting sites work for you?
They worked really well. I'll explain a little bit. So with early voting, local clerks have maybe 3 options. They could run early voting themselves, they could partner with another community, or, and this was the maybe option, if their county clerk offered to collaborate with their county clerk. And I say that because some of our neighbors, my colleagues around us, have not offered that. What'd you say? All of them, almost all of them. Wayne, Macomb, Genesee, those locals are on their own. So, and I know I just said this story again the other night, but I happen to be, I live in West Bloomfield, and my son came home from college, and I needed him to vote absentee, so drove him over to Debbie's office to vote absentee, and while I was there, she had a reporter there. She didn't know it was coming, but, and the reporter asked me, if Prop 2 passes, will you offer early voting, with your locals? And I said yes, and I had already thought about it. It wasn't like I just made that up, but then I really had to stick to it because it was on camera. But 45 out of our 52 communities. I was a little surprised that it was that high, but that's fine. It makes it easier in some ways. In some ways, it makes it harder that it's not all 52. And I'll explain that in a second. But a lot of other states have early voting, and a lot of them it is 1 site per county. Sometimes you see 2-hour lines for that. I mean, I'm not gonna argue that, but some of my colleagues are doing that, who are offering it, who are doing it for their locals. They're smaller, but didn't think that would work that well in Oakland County. So we kind of grouped communities together and developed 18 regional sites. And I want to add, like, for some of our locals, they don't have a building within their community that they could use. So think of maybe your typical election day precinct location. Well, what, you're going to use us, first of all, school's not going to want you in there for 9 days. But, in the school gym, now the kids aren't getting PE. You got strangers coming. I mean, schools are already a little hesitant, right? So that's not an option. Place of worship, that's not going to happen. You got services going on while people are voting? I don't think so, right? So not every community even has a location that they could run early voting out of. But so we grouped communities together, and we came up with 18 regional sites. And this room actually was used in November. This is the early voting site for Bloomfield Township, Birmingham, and Southfield Township. And then in addition, we have a central site that anyone from any of those 45 communities that have contracted with us can also use to early vote at, and that is at the Waterford Oaks Activity Center. I really wanted to have it on campus, on county campus, but I can't have a voter walk by a sheriff deputy to go cast their ballot. That can be voter intimidation. So, we have security in our buildings. I couldn't do that. So we have the Waterford Oaks Activity Center as our central site. Now, everyone should have or will, depending upon where you live, have received a postcard with your early voting information on it, saying the dates, the times, the location or locations. And the reason why I said it would be easier if everybody at the point had contracted with us, because every time I talk about early voting, I kind of have to have an asterisk, right? I can talk for almost all of Oakland County of what our hours are, what our days are, et cetera. But those remaining communities might have different hours, right? Maybe we're doing it for 9 days. We are doing it for the 9 days. Maybe they're going to do it for 10. I don't know. Maybe. So, but it ran really well. The voters who did it and actually who utilized it, and I'm one of them. Debbie was there. I loved it. Every voter that I talked to loved it. The workers loved it. Why? Because it was a set day, right? It wasn't like election day where it goes into the wee hours maybe and that sort of thing. It went well. And I didn't talk about that, but that was another level of stress in here. When in training our workers for November, we didn't know what the electronic poll book was going to look like when we were doing our training. So that was stressful for us. And it's still changing, and we don't know what all the changes will be for February. So, it worked out well. It worked out well. And it'll continue to run well. But it's just another stress. But it's okay. It's all good. Did you want to say something? You want to add something?
To add to that, and I'm just be a little embarrassed, but you deserve a lot of kudos for that because you help the locals out tremendously. You save time, money for your locals.
Don't embarrass me.
And you do deserve some
Thank you.
recognition.
Thank you. I always say democracy is a team sport. And I want to say our local clerks already have so much on their shoulders. It is a lot. It is a lot. And there's more. And I don't know how, I feel bad for the counties where my colleagues didn't offer. I just think that's a lot to put on one person's shoulders. I really do. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. Yes?
Could you do a quick review of what a canvas is or canvassing?
Sure, absolutely, thank you. So after the election, well, let me start before that. The Board of Canvassers is made up of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans that are chosen by the Board of Commissioners, by the County Board of Commissioners. Both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party both submit 3 names to the commission, and they vote on, and like all the commissioners vote on the Democrat and the Republicans. So, and it's a 4-year term. And so every 2 years, one Democrat and one Republican are up, so to speak. So they rotate, their terms are staggered. And so with the canvass, as I said, it is the process that we go through that you're not going to see any official results until the canvass is complete. And we have a long checklist that we go through of just making sure things were done correctly. But to me, really the crux of it is making sure that everything balances, that the number of voters matches the number of ballots tabulated, okay? We want to know that happened. But we're looking at other things too. How many spoiled ballots were there? How many were there challenge ballots? Just looking at all these different things. Did a Democrat and Republican sign off, on the seal number? Did the workers sign the oath of office? Did they check the checklist off? Like there's just all these different things that did they sign the tape at the end of the night? Did the workers sign the tape at the end of the night, as well as the book? And just all these different things that we go through for every single precinct. For every single precinct. So we have over 500 precincts in Oakland County. Now it's more because of early voting. So it takes time for us to go through all of that, one by one. So
When is it done?
So usually it starts the morning, not always. Jim knows because sometimes he's shown up and he's like, what's happening? Thought we were starting. But often the day after the election. Yep, and like I said, it has to be done within 2 weeks. So, is that good? Okay, good. Yes?
Hi, thank you for being with us. It's kind of like you're preaching to the choir here,
Yeah.
but I think that there are people who don't share some of the sentiments you're talking about. And I have a neighbor in particular who resents he's a senior, getting all the early ballots. He doesn't like, why is this being sent to me? I didn't request it. I like to go in person. It's costing too much money. What kind of arguments do you have to get that?
Well, so people say ballot and it's an application.
Correct, and I did say that.
And they might argue with you. I mean, I've had phone calls like this in my office as well. An application is not a ballot. And, we've got free speech here, right? Anybody can reach out. I know that there was talk, some people wanted to limit who could send you an application. I'm not going to get into the politics of that, but, parties do it, groups do it. It's just to ensure, everyone wants to make sure that people have access to the ballot, right? I don't know what to tell him except it's not a ballot.
And he doesn't have to return it.
And he doesn't have to return it. He can recycle it.
If he got a ballot, he did request it.
Right. Clerks aren't just printing labels out of the blue, right? It's a very meticulous process to know who to send a ballot to. So there's a lot that goes into that. So yeah, he's not just getting a ballot. And sometimes, quite honestly, people forget. We had a voter who showed up for early voting, and the worker said, "You voted absentee."
I did it once.
Huh?
I've done it once.
You've done it once. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, people did, right? You forget because sometimes you return your absentee ballot like a month before. I mean, I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, you know? So, I do actually, it was pizza. But besides that, but people, you know, they forget that they've already voted absentee, or they forget that they requested an absentee ballot. I mean, all we can do is pull out their application, say, do we have fraud? Is this your signature? Oh yeah, no, that's my signature. Okay, so you did request it.
Do we have a legislation that any senior over 55 or 65 automatically receives?
No.
I guess maybe in my community? Because-
No.
No?
No, and you have to request, and so let's talk about how that bit has changed a little bit, and it hasn't been that long that we've had the permanent application list, right? We've had it for a little bit, not super long, but now we have the permanent ballot list. And the permanent application list is going to be phased out. I can't tell you when because the state keeps changing that time frame. So at some point. But the permanent ballot list will be, once you sign up for that, you will be sent a ballot for every election. And if you move, it will follow you because it will be denoted in the qualified voter file. So, I mean, that's going to change things. I will tell you, I have an article printed out on my dining room that studies have shown that areas that have just vote by mail, that's the only way that they conduct their elections, an increased turnout. And to me, I prefer an increased turnout. I don't care how you vote, it's just that you vote, right? You use your voice, you use the power, you don't let somebody else do that for you. So we'll see if that increases, and if early voting increases turnout, or if it just changes how people vote. But can I ask a question? How many people in this room typically vote absentee? Okay. Should I just say, who doesn't vote absentee? Okay, all right, so if you don't vote, for those who vote absentee, well, first let me tell you, you will now be able to take your absentee ballot and put it in the tabulator yourself, either at your early voting site or at your precinct on election day. Yay, isn't that wonderful? What is wonderful about it to me is that you can still take the time to fill it out at your kitchen table. Right? Figure out if a ballot proposal means yes, if yes means yes or yes means no, and I don't write those, so don't blame me. So take the time to figure that out, right? Go to League of Women Voters website and see how candidates have answered the questions. I have directed my kids to that. When they don't want me to tell them how to vote, I don't want to tell them how to vote. I said, here's where you go. But then have that confidence that, and I'm going to say, that maybe you didn't spoil your ballot, right? Remember, in August, you can only vote one party. And that's even when you flip it over. That's where we see more spoiled ballots than anything. People flip it over and they forget. You got to still stay in that same lane. So remember, that spoils the whole ballot. None of your partisan votes will count. Nonpartisan section will, but none of the partisan section. You vote absentee, you don't realize that you did that, right? And your vote is private. Nobody knows that worker who is opening up, who's putting your ballot in the tabulator, they don't know, oh, I got to go call Lisa Brown because she spoiled her ballot. No. So to make sure, right, you did it right, you get to put it in the tabulator. And if you did cross parties, let's say in August, the tabulator's going to, I hate using this word, but it spits it back out at you, right? It ejects it. And it asks you, our equipment asks you, do you want to accept your ballot as is? Meaning, you know what, whoever gets it, I worry more about November or whatever, or I got to get to work, right? Just take it. I'm more concerned about the ballot proposal or something. Or, no, I want to take it, I want to fix this. This is really important to me. Take your ballot back, go back to the election workers and say, I spoiled my ballot, will you please issue me a new one? And then you get to go, right, fix it. So, so I want to know, out of those who vote AV, absentee, how many of you think that you would utilize early voting? Not that many still, huh? I really want to know why. Am I allowed to ask why? Does anybody want to share why?
Yeah, don't trust it.
What don't you trust?
Hasn't been proven yet.
What?
People can't interfere.
Well, how do you think people could
I
interfere?
don't know, I'm not a computer whiz, but other people are.
No, so this is the same equipment that is used in our precincts. Again, it is all tested. So as I said, we do public accuracy tests for the equipment that we've been doing for absentee ballots, but now we also have them for our early voting equipment. That's something you could come and watch, right? Come and see us test our equipment. Remember, just like in a precinct and in an AV counting board, you have Democrats and Republicans sitting next to each other working in your in the early voting site.
I have another question.
Sure.
Would you explain the process of what happens when someone signs an affidavit because they showed up personally with improper or inadequate identification? Is there an affidavit that they can sign?
Yes.
And then what happens to the affidavit?
Well, that's retained. I mean, that's on the back of the application to vote.
Well, that's just for an application.
No. That's when you come to vote in your precinct. When you come to vote on election day, you have to fill out an application to vote, right? Now, this is assisting the election worker who's in front of the electronic poll book or electronic paper. I don't want to say paper. Electronic poll book to make sure you're in the right place, right? That you're a registered voter and that you're supposed to be voting in this location, that you're not down the street at the elementary school down the street or something like that, right? So every voter has to fill out an application to vote. If you have an ID, you are to show it at the same time, right? You hand it over with the application to vote. If you don't have an ID, the affidavit that says, I am not in possession of an ID, is on the back of that application to vote.
And how is that affidavit processed? Or when is it processed?
Well, there's not a process to it. It's
They sign it. How do you
Correct.
know that the person that's signing it is that person if they didn't show up with proper ID in the first place?
you want go ahead.
I just to add, when that voter comes in, and I think that's where there's some confusion. It's not that just a voter comes in off the street and says, I'd like to vote, I'm going to sign an affidavit. That voter is a registered voter in that jurisdiction. So if they were to come to vote and they're signing an affidavit that says, I am who I am at risk of perjuring myself, and they
And felony.
sign someone else's name, and then that other person came to vote, they're taking a risk that most people aren't taking.
Right.
So it's really, I know that there's a lot.
And their name has to be in the poll book,
Their name-
right?
They
I mean,
have to be a registered voter in that poll book. It's not just anyone walking in.
And they also have to know the address.
right.
Yes.
I was going to say, it's not just putting your name, it's putting the address,
Their
yes.
name
And birth date.
That they're going to be in that precinct.
So is it up to the person that witnesses the affidavit to say, yes, this is the right signature? Or is it passed on to someone else?
No, no. Somebody is signing under perjury of law that they are who they say they are. Okay? Just like any kind of affidavit. Somebody's signing that under penalty of perjury of law.
Their vote is counted because they signed, someone signed it.
But understand, if I walked into this site, let's say for early voting, and I said, I don't have any ID, I'm going to fill out a thing, all right, I know my name and my address, I'm not going to be in the poll book here. Because this is not where I vote. I am not a registered voter in this area. So I'm not going to be in the poll book. They're not just, do you understand?
I think I do now.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, yeah.
I didn't question it, but I had someone who was upset about the voting process question it, and I want to be able to back and get
Okay.
your answer.
And I'll say, when we do audits afterwards, we see how many affidavits. That is one of the things that we look at to see if we don't check them, but we're seeing how many affidavits, if there were any, right? That's just something we're looking at. I can tell you it is minuscule how many people fill out an affidavit. It is minuscule, okay? I have to go through hundreds of these things, literally, for one precinct, and maybe there's one. It is minuscule how many people fill that out. Yes?
But you do have, when you register to vote, you have a signature there.
Yes.
So if somebody really decided that things were crazy, you could go back and check signatures as well. I mean, if somebody challenged.
Well, so realize like the election workers don't have access to the qualified voter file. So we're not checking signatures when somebody's voting or anything like that.
I understand. But
Okay.
I'm just saying, there is that backup if something goes crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Back to early voting.
Yes.
So anybody who's registered to vote can early vote if it's in their area. And if we have absentee ballots, because we signed up for them, and say we'd like to put it through, we can go to early voting, or we can go on election day and
Yes.
put it through.
Yes. Yes. You still have to fill out an application to vote, right? Don't just go up to the tabulator. That would be bad. We need to have that you voted so that you don't vote again, right? So you still have to fill out the application to vote and everything. But yes, you can bring your ballot already filled out and everything. And sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's just what I'm trying to, I don't remember getting a postcard in the mail about early voting in my area, so I haven't done.
And you may not have received it yet. 45 days. You should this week if you haven't.
Okay, Orion Township, I have. So,
And
You will.
oh, okay.
So you don't have to call the clerk anymore and spoil the ballot and all that. Remember, when I'm working the polls, people come in and they have their absentee ballot with them.
On election
or
day,
they know-
yes.
Or you say, hey, you had an absentee ballot, they say the dog ate it.
Yeah.
You know, that then you had to call the clerk. Well, I guess you'll still have to if they don't have the absentee ballot with them.
Correct.
You'll still.
That's an issue, but yes.
I got you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So how does that affect the EPB then, if they have the ballot and they want to cast it?
Mhm.
Does that get
So-
entered
They
in
didn't
with
used
the
to be
number
able to.
that's?
Yeah, I mean, that's a change that's happening to the electronic poll book, right? That, yes, that voter will be in there or be added in there, that they are now, instead of being an absentee voter, now they're an election day voter or an early voter, depending upon where they're.
Isn't that important though, if they have to change the EPB?
No, you're using that same ballot, right.
And that has a particular number. Do they have to put that in the EPB as a note? I'm just trying to anticipate.
Yeah, I mean, for early voting, it doesn't matter. So at early voting, we're using ballot on demand equipment, which is the most customer-based voting I think you can get. As I said, I'm going to use Waterford Oaks as the example. As I said, we have over 500 precincts in Oakland County. 45 of the communities are contracting with us, so let's say 450. Right? We can't have packets of ballots for all of those precincts, right? And I mean, we've got splits of school districts and county commission seats and state, right? Like even within your precinct, you may have 2 different ballot styles. So we have ballot on demand, which means you fill out your application to vote. They pull you up in the electronic poll book, and they say, okay, you live in, I don't know, Paradise Township, I'm making that up, precinct 1. And they pass it to the next person who's working the ballot on demand equipment, and they pull up Paradise Township Precinct 1 ballot, and they print it right there for you. Which also means we won't run out of ballots if suddenly there's this big, rush to go vote early on any given day. Yes, Marie. Hi.
2 things. So when you fill out your absentee ballot and you mail it in, is there a way to check to see that you got it? You go online and...
That your local clerk got it? Yes. So MVIC, the Secretary of State's website, you can track your ballot to see if it's been received. And I recommend that people do that if that's how you're going to do it. And I also say if you are voting absentee, for me, for my comfort level, if it's less than 3 weeks before an election, I wouldn't use the U.S. mail. I'd use a Dropbox. I just, you'd hate that it just wasn't received in time. Like, that would be an awful reason for your vote not to count. So, but yeah, there's ballot tracking. There has been, and now there'll be a more robust, that was another new thing, right, is ballot tracking for everybody. So, thank you.
Since every state's different, Michigan allows felons who have served their time to vote.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of people know this.
Yeah.
And I've read that people who are just get out of prison are automatically registered to vote. Is that true?
That's a new thing that the secretary is. And, well, so I will tell you, it's not just felons who have served their sentence, but if you're awaiting sentencing. So I went across the street from the courthouse, but I went to the Oakland County Jail and I registered voters there and gave them applications for absentee ballots, because if they're still awaiting trial, if they're awaiting sentencing, they still have that right to cast their vote. So, but the secretary has been doing, the Secretary of State has been doing kind of mobile office visits and everything to jails as well, and making sure. But I think that's now part of the discharge procedures, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I think, yeah.
There was an article in the paper the other day about a guy who, 32 years ago, he was out of prison and he's never voted because he didn't know.
Yeah. Isn't that a shame?
So, yeah, we have to...
Yeah, that's one thing that Michigan has always been, kind of a leader, or, on the top of the game with it. Yes?
Hi, I have 2 questions about
Okay.
absentee ballots.
Okay.
Although this happened years ago, I wonder how I would address this if it happened again.
Okay.
But a highly educated coworker was blasting absentee ballots. He says, my son got 2 ballots into me.
It's not 2 ballots.
And I'm like, I don't know how that would happen. Is that even possible? And what if somebody did get 2 absentee ballots in the mail?
No.
Applications. They probably got 2 applications.
So again, just as we said earlier, people think an application is a ballot. I don't know why they use those terms interchangeably. They are extremely different, right? One you have to fill out to get the other. So it's that education piece, right, of understanding. Now, the ballot is the thing you actually vote, right, where all your choices are on. The application for an absentee ballot,
Okay. So
different.
2 different things.
Yeah.
And then an experience I had when my oldest child voted for the first time as a college student. I told her, make sure you register to vote. She did. We kept asking her again and again and again, are you going to vote? Are you going to vote? Yes, 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 yes. Until Sunday before the election, we go visit her at school, and she said, I can't vote. I hit the ceiling. I said, what do you mean? Well, I didn't register for the first time in person, so I can't register by absentee ballot. And I know that's real. I spent the whole day in the car going to get her at school and bringing her to our local elementary school to vote, and I sent her back. I was lucky I had the day off work. But I'm concerned that college students don't know this when they register for the first time, and that they're just throwing up their arms and saying, I can't vote.
Can't they register online?
They can register online, but also we now have same-day voter registration. So even if they registered at home, she could have gone to wherever she goes to.
So we're in Oakland Township.
But where does she go to school?
Oh, she was in Ann Arbor.
Okay, so she could have gone Jackie won't be happy that I say this, the clerk there, because I don't know if you remember, but the Ann Arbor clerk had kids in line till midnight doing same-day voter registration. And as long as they're in line to register, or just like on election day, as long as you're in line at your precinct to vote by 8 p.m., as long as you're in that line by 8 p.m., as long as you're in the line to register by 8 p.m., and that's why kids were waiting hours, they can still do it, and then absentee vote we call it absentee vote right there.
My
Right?
concern is at that young age, when they're doing this for the first time, they don't get in their head what their options are.
Yeah,
And
right.
what the consequences of their decision is. She voted or registered by mail in Oakland Township, and then who knows, she was studying, she didn't know she could vote on campus.
You want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Our 2 biggest things we have with that age group, for those of you who have with college students, one is they're maturing their signature, and then the signature doesn't match, so remind them that they need to sign like they signed on their driver's license, because that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
The biggest thing, my friend's daughter, 4 signatures we have had to take in, changing her signature. And And the other thing is that they wait till the Friday before and call, I'm in school in New York, can you send me an absentee ballot? That absentee ballot has to physically get sent to them. They can put an alternate address on their application. They can contact us to give an alternate address at college, but they have to allow time for that ballot to physically get mailed to them and physically mailed back. Our absentee ballots for the February 27th election are going to go out tomorrow morning. So tell them, don't wait. You cannot call your clerk Friday before and you're in Nebraska at school and it's going to get there. So the biggest thing is to tell them to plan ahead and make sure that they're requesting that ballot so that they get it. And when they get it, return it. And I've told some of my friends' parents, send an overnight envelope to your kid because they might be using that.
And just so everybody knows who's answering questions up here is Debbie Binder, the West Bloomfield Township Clerk. So thank you, Debbie. Yes.
I was wondering why, if you work the election, your name and address and party affiliation is public knowledge.
We have to ensure by law that there's at least one Democrat and one Republican that are in every voting site, right? So that's why you have to declare party. And I will say on top of that, the list of workers are sent to the party chairs to review and to make sure that somebody isn't saying they're one party when they're really the other. Like, no, I know this person. I saw them at that other party, the other party's rally or something like that. So those names and everything. Listen, my name's Lisa Brown. I mean, that's a really common name, right? I'm not the only Lisa Brown in Oakland County. So a long time I wasn't the only Lisa Brown in West Bloomfield. So, and I was Lisa Miller before. Well, that's what I mean. And not just to say Lisa Brown in West Bloomfield. I know another Lisa Brown who lives in West Bloomfield. So it's Lisa Brown who lives on this street, right? Kind of stuff. And yeah.
I think maybe I can speak. I have worked an election in the past. I'm double thinking it now because of fear of ramifications. Who knows? People are crazy. Right? Just saying. I'm saying what maybe some people are thinking and don't want to say.
Okay. And again, and I did point out to you the law that's taking effect next month, right? Threat to election workers is a misdemeanor if it's their third. If they've done it more than two, it's a felony. Okay, we're stepping it up. It's not okay. That behavior is not okay. Yes. You've been so patient with your hand. Thank you. I know you've been waiting.
I'm wondering, are our voter rolls periodically called from people moving out of state?
Yeah. Voter list maintenance. Yes, absolutely. And, one of the first things that Secretary Benson did, and she announced it at a meeting, and I cheered, and I was the only one, and everybody kind of looked at me, but it was something that I was asking the previous secretary to do, and she didn't want to do it, but was join ERIC, which is really a cooperation amongst other states to share that information if somebody has moved, that sort of thing. They moved to Florida. If Florida is still a part of it, I'm not sure, but they moved to a state that's still a part of ERIC, right? And then so there's making sure that notification is given to the original state to say, take this person off because now they're here, right? But yes, so the law changed, I don't remember if it was 22 or 23, for county clerks to now, as we heard, like death records are also in my office. That's another thing. So designating people who have passed away in the qualified voter file, so then the local clerks can do that. So there's a lot and we have little, in the qualified voter file, there'll be like a flashing M, somebody's moved, we have little codes, little visual cues and things and letters that stand for different things for the maintenance, but yes.
My son moved out probably over 10 years ago, and he's moved to a couple of different states in the interim.
And he's still on. So I'll say, it would behoove your son to also maybe contact the local clerk and say, hey, I've moved out of state, please remove me from the voting rolls.
It actually works into a narrative that
okay.
my son, with his leanings at this juncture in his life, support. So I tried calling my own clerk and saying, can you please get this guy off the polls?
And we can't have somebody else do that, right? Because
So like
that
if
could be
Jonas
very
really is
bad.
not him, then-
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Yes,
Same with me, Lisa. How do I, my daughter's not gonna do it. I mean, she lives in California, she's voted in California for long, she's like 45. And we still get an absentee, and I went to the clerk's, the city clerk's.
yeah, application, not ballot, right?
So who does she call?
Your local clerk, your city or township clerk.
We'll need a signed request with the matching signature.
Because, you can't say it. What if your child votes differently than you do, right? Or your neighbor votes differently than you do. It's got to be a signed statement to say, I'm me, right? So then they can check the signature and the qualified voter file, make sure it's actually the person who's saying, please remove me, not somebody else who's trying to mess with somebody else's voter registration.
Wouldn't it bounce off of ERIC, though, if California is also on the ERIC system? Shouldn't that help?
It should. What's been disheartening is how many states have been withdrawing their membership from ERIC, and now they're trying to build the very same thing in a separate sandbox. It just, yeah.
But what about change of address when you change your driver's license? Doesn't that, you often...
Well, so you're talking within the state, and that would change usually when you're doing something with your driver's license. It affects your voter registration, right? That's an automatic, but if you're out of state, so. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Robert. You're going to be a tough one, aren't you? I know.
I have one other one I was going to ask, but I want to start with this.
Okay.
easy
Okay,
one.
thank you.
But
He's wonderful. He sends me, gives me great ideas. He's wonderful.
well,
Yes.
this has to do with the challenger instructions.
Okay.
I was just curious what's going on with that, because there was a lot of things just before the November 23 election where,
The lawsuit.
and I was just curious if you've heard anything about what's happening for...
I think that decision was stayed, and now it's moved up, and I think we're just waiting to hear what the final outcome of that is.
Okay. And I mean, I don't know if I need to explain more what that is. It's just that there were different instructions that were issued
From the
in,
Bureau,
May
yeah.
of 22 for how challengers and poll watchers, how they work with the
What they can and cannot do, and yeah, directions from the state as to from the Bureau.
Because I got very concerned when that it was like a week before the election, and they said, you can't do any of this, and then
Yeah, it makes it challenging to do training for election workers when the law is changing at the last minute. So.
And truthfully, I have not actually, even though I've done several elections, I've not actually had to have an actual challenge occur, but it could have occurred back in 22, but it didn't. But so I was just curious. I hadn't heard much about that recently.
Okay, and I just want to add, so challengers, by right, the political parties can have challengers, but also third-party groups can apply. I mean, there's rules as to what they have to present and how they ask if they can have challengers. They have to wear credentials, and there are definitely rules as to what challengers can and cannot do. I was in a precinct once, not in West Bloomfield, and the challenger was very aggressive in saying, I don't think that's you on your driver's license. Give me your driver's license. They're like, no, you don't get to see that, lady. That's not overstepping your bounds. So there are things, but, and there can't be blanket challenges either. I challenge, everybody who I just walked in the door, or everybody on the street, or it has to be specific to a person, good cause, good reason, that sort of thing. Sorry. What was your harder question?
Well, it's not hard, but it's more uninteresting perhaps, but
Okay.
Down in a little bit more in the weeds, but it has to do with it has to do with something more in my local community that's changing, and I just wanted to ask you about it.
Okay.
Okay, so you had the AD County Board from a county standpoint that you're going to be doing again in February.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And up to this point, my experience has been when, because you only get the AV ballots up to a certain point in time, they have to kind of draw.
Monday,
lines.
4 p.m., yes.
Yeah, those are shipped to you,
Yeah.
and then the AV ballots that come to the community after that point in time have to be handled by that community.
Yes.
And up to this point, we've always had them then sent out to the individual precincts.
Yep.
To be processed.
Yes.
Is there something?
Yes, ask me about it, because I've been pushing for this since the beginning.
Because that puts quite a burden on the precincts to be able to handle those.
Yes, yes.
And I understand that our community was that perhaps they were getting allowed to be able to have like
a mini AV counting board.
Yeah, so
that's
a real thing.
It is a real thing. I can't tell you. I mean, Debbie, I've been pushing for this because really it would delay precinct results, which people were questioning. And people also question, who's this person and why are they feeding all these ballots into the tabulator? And then even with the recount that we just had, somebody was looking and we were counting ballots from a precinct and they're like, wait a minute, why are there folded ballots in there? So let me explain why. We count their absentee ballots, but anything they get after 4 p.m. on Monday, they had to take out to the precincts to tabulate. And realize all the steps that have to occur before they can even do that. And remember, people can still drop their ballot in a drop box at 7:59 p.m., right? In 59 seconds. So, then the clerk has to bring that ballot in. They've got to check the signature. They've got to check it in the QVF. They have to do all these different things, figure out where it goes, then, and go through all of them that they've now brought in or have been dropped off, and sort them into precincts and then drive them out to the correct precinct locations. Now, after years of pushing, we finally got that now local communities who do contract with us can run a mini AV counting board. So to me, it's just such a huge win, and I think it's a great win for our locals who contract with us.
Was that something that was what prevented that from occurring before? Was that like a state thing, or was that a county?
It was in the law, the way that it was written.
The law said something about that things processed afterward had to be processed at the precinct or something.
Right, that ballots because there's one absentee voting counting board is what they were saying, right? And that would be with us.
Okay,
so
changed as part
it has now been changed that clerks have the option. They can still take them out to the precinct if they want to, or they can run a mini AV counting board.
I was just curious. It definitely improved things from a precinct standpoint. I just wanted, it was interesting that changed because, that was always a burden.
I can't, and it was an education with legislators to try and explain to them why we really needed this. And to be honest, we're really the only county that does this. I have a couple colleagues who maybe count their AVs for one municipality. Nobody does what we do. We're actually the largest AV counting board in the state now. And so to explain to them why we needed this, why this was helpful for our local clerks, but also the election workers. Because again, if you were used to working in a precinct and you knew the polls close at 8 and maybe there's a little line, so maybe 8:30 and then you got to stay to close up and all the closing procedures and all that, 9:30, 10 o'clock maybe. Now it was a much later night because you're waiting for those absentee ballots to come in. And so I'm just so happy that we could finally get it through.
That definitely improves stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Just an aside thing, I'm one of the people that actually went to a canvas board and had binoculars, but it was really, and really what it was for was to, what I used it for was just to be able to see the information that was on ballot boxes, what precinct are they?
Are they working on?
Yeah, they work on something. That's what I was using it for.
Okay.
Because I was taking notes
for your community, you're looking at your community. Okay.
For the league.
Oh, for the league. Okay. And I'll say, we've got a number of people working at the same time, canvassing at the same time, and usually, I'll go in and take, one precinct or two precincts from a community because I know maybe I'm not going to be able to be there all day and I don't want to clog it all up, but I have staff or the canvassers will take an entire community and just sit there and work it all day and everything. So you have multiple communities being worked on at the canvas at the same time. But yes, thank you. Oh, we're done? Okay, good. That's the hook. The clapping is the hook. That's a good cue. Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for being partners really, and part of team democracy. Thank you.